It's Lou and Lou Land from Portland in Oregon, welcoming you. Well, I welcome you. This is my first. This is my popping my hoo-ha cherry. Well, yes. No, I'm popping my hoo-ha cherry. I'm very excited. Thanks for having me. I'm Lou, or Lou and Lou Land on Instagram land. Mid-menopause, mid-marriage separation, whispering because my husband's upstairs. I've lived in America. I'm British, you may be able to tell. Moved here 7 years ago to Portland, and I'm about to take off in my vintage RV for a tour around America. It's the Self-Love Revolution Tour. Welcome to the Hot Flash Bash. I've been telling everyone about Camp Hoo-Ha that will listen to me this week. The man in the garage, the man in plaid pantry, anyone who would listen. Have you ever heard of Camp Hoo-Ha? Amazing. Hoo-ha-ha. Well, I'm loving middle age, to be honest. Menopause suits me just fine. I've been very blessed. It's made me very horny. That might actually be leaving my husband more than the menopause, but you know, I've got a kid who's about to graduate from high school, and the menopause for me is a time of the most exciting change of my life. See, here's my theory around the menopause. Men call it a midlife crisis because you know what's happening? Women are programmed for change. Is it just in us from our periods when we're 12, 13, we change every month. Our tits grow, our hips change, we give birth. And you know what women do? We change, we adapt, we plan, we roll with it. That's what we're just designed to do. We have all these major life changes. And then when we get to the menopause, generally the kids are about to leave home, they're making a break for freedom. And the menopause for me is like, right, okay. I've done that. I've done an okay job with the kids, done an all right job with this. And now it's time for me. It's time for motherfucking me. So, yeah, I'm quite excited by that. But I'm putting everyone first. I'm going all about me this year. So you can follow my tour on Instagram, Lou and Lou Land. I don't know what else to tell you. What else do I tell you?
Tell them about being a Girl Guide.
I'm a vintage lover. I'm coming to you live my wardrobe. Look, I'm sitting in amongst my wardrobe. I'm a huge vintage collector and stylist here in Portland. But my dad is a vicar back in England, or a minister. And I grew up, before he did that, he was a scout leader. So one of my earliest memories are of scout camps, and then church youth club camps. But I was always in trouble. Amazing. I was often found in the wrong tent at the wrong time, and being, enjoying the perks of scout camps when you're the only girl there. Because, daughter, I like to live up to the reputation. I'm wishing you a very happy evening. Mel, talk to me. What else can I
want to hear about clothes we shouldn't wear when we hit a certain age.
There is no such thing as clothes you should wear at a certain age. I'm going for Foxy Scout tonight. I'm going for Foxy Scout. What do you reckon? I'm actually wearing the Scout shirt of an 8-year-old child, wedged up over my middle-aged sagging boobs. But oh well. It's the Zero Fucks Club. That's also what I am the director of the Zero Fucks Club. Of course, as you get older, that's exactly what you give. Less and less of them. There's nothing but things to look forward to, ladies. Dry vaginas, that is what lube is for.
And your favorite toys?
My favorite toys. So about 3 years ago, I was the very first time I ever posted a picture of my naked bum on the internet. And I'm sorry to say, but I ended up getting a dick pic. I ended up getting a dick pic from a very young man from the gym, who was probably half my age, and I was actually old enough to be his grandmother. Never mind. He sent me a dick pic, and it really, I'm like the worst feminist in the world, but it actually quite changed my life. It's been a long time since anyone had even flirted with me. and it opened up it opened up a whole new world of possibility. And I started to feel sexy again. For a long time, I'd lost my sexy somewhere in motherhood and marriage and middle age and life. And I hate that the dick pic did that to me, but it did. And it kind of brought me back to life. And I started to put things out there a bit more on the internet, and feeling a little bit more sexy. And a vibrator company actually hit me up and asked me to be an ambassador for them. And so I began my vibrator advocacy. And I like to call myself a professional wanker, encouraging women to take care of their own pleasure and their own love of themselves. Because I figure if I'd loved myself and put myself a little bit further up the line of importance earlier in my marriage, I might have saved the day a little bit more. So yeah, I found my sexy again in middle age and becoming a vibrator advocate. I was lucky enough to be sent a very huge box of vibrators from one of the companies that I work with. And now I get paid to wank. And every time a woman wanks, I make money, which kind of makes me a genius in my book. But the exciting news is, and I haven't told anyone this, I'm bringing out my own vibrator. She's launching in April.
I need about 600 of them. Not for me.
Oh, it's so exciting. So, and Lube in Luland is coming.
Love it. All right. Say goodbye to the campers and thank you, Lou.
Thank you for having me, campers. Enjoy your evening.
Every camp has a theme song that requires you sing along. The more we keep on drinking, the better we'll start singing. If you like to drink, wanna learn to fix your sink,
seems like a functional thing.
wanna earn some badges and unite with other badges. Let's make a place that we belong. Sing the campfire hoo-ha song.
We're going to camp
Hoo-ha, hoo-ha, hoo-ha. Yeah! Gonna camp hoo-ha, hoo-ha, hoo-ha. Yeah! Gonna camp hoo-ha, hoo-ha, hoo-ha.
Yeah!
Gonna camp hoo-ha, hoo-ha.
Who are you? Are!
You want the fun that camp brings,
I do.
but you really fucking hate camping.
I do.
Can make a craft or have a beer.
Craft beer.
You'll learn some useful shit here. That's what I hear anyway. Let's make a place that we belong and join the campfire hoo-ha song.
We're going to camp
Hoo-ha, hoo-ha, hoo-ha. Yeah! Gonna camp hoo-ha, hoo-ha, hoo-ha. Yeah! Gonna camp hoo-ha. Me? Hoo-ha, hoo-ha. Gonna camp hoo-ha, hoo-ha. Hoo-ha, 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 hoo-ha.
That's 2 minutes. You were right. That's funny.
Hello, campers. Happy hoo-ha, happy Friday. We are hoo-hawing on a Friday night, and we never do that. And this is exciting because we can sleep in tomorrow and have extra wine. It is our hot flash bash. I don't know if you can see, but I have a glitzy dollar store disco strobe light that's built into my set. So I'm feeling very fancy. I was trying to sort of match Llewellyn's look. I don't have nearly the options that she has. So I went a little Camp Hoo-Ha, a little J-Lo, a little sort of flash dance. I got my crop top on, a little bit of bling here. So I'm mixing things up a bit. And even though we're talking about menopause, you guys know how I am. I like to put a wacky spin on everything. So I wanted to make this more of a party. We want to have a menopause party. So I called it a hot flash bash. And I wanted to put a sort of a positive spin on it. And I even in the Facebook group the other day, I thought I would try to like get as much positive insight about menopause from you guys. And the only thing I got was that you guys could get D any time of the month and that you think you could get off on murder charges with the menopause excuse. That was the extent of your positive feelings about this topic. But anyways, we have a great event for you guys tonight. And I'm excited to hoo-ha with you guys on Friday night. And I'm super excited we had the amazing Lou and Luland here for a couple of minutes. I've been stalking her on Instagram. She's got a great story and is full of all of the joyful silliness that we appreciate at camp. So I'm so glad we got to have her. I think we got a lot of newbies in the group. If you guys are new, say hi in the Facebook feed, and we will give you a warm hoo-ha welcome. I'm going to tell you quickly about what Camp Hoo-Ha is. You probably have somewhat of an idea by now, but we're essentially a skill building club for adult women. We get together, we earn badges, we learn new skills, we make new friends, and for 1 or 2 hours a month, we focus just on ourselves. We put ourselves at the top of the food chain and just really create a space to just let off some steam. And we started camp in 2017 where we were getting together in person, meeting once a month. We started moving to other cities. And then when COVID hit, we obviously went to an online format so we could keep the camp spirit alive, continue to make our friendships, continue to have a place to just kind of escape the craziness of the world for a couple hours a month. So welcome newbies, welcome to you regular campers. And I wanted to talk a bit about what I like about camp. One of my favorite things is that Camp Hoo-Ha somehow becomes this gathering place for women of all ages. Even though I've had camps that were maybe, more targeted for certain demographics, it's become this kind of place where women from their 20s to their 60s, even 70s have kind of found their way to us. And I feel like campers always have this youthful spirit, no matter what age they are. But even though they have a youthful spirit, from time to time, I still see some interesting behavior from some of our more mature campers. And an example of that is summer camp. So we actually have a summer camp every year. It's been postponed for the last 2 years, but it is coming back this June. And summer camp is just like kids' summer camp. We get away for 2 nights. We sleep in bunk beds. We do archery, canoeing. We're all dirty, having that sort of childhood experience over the course of a weekend. And some of my more mature campers, when they roll in, they back up their SUV and those gals are unloading. They've got their Thermarest, they've got their white noise machine, they've got their memory foam body pillow, a weighted blanket, they've got their melatonin, their CBD, they've got their eye mask, they've got their Calm app with their Matthew McConaughey nighttime talk, they've got their earplugs, they got their silk pillow. And we watch them hauling all of their shit to their bunk room. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they think they're going to fucking sleep. And then the 20-year-old campers roll in. They come with a toothbrush and their weed. And guess who's having a better sleep? So that's one of the funny insights that I always kind of chuckle about. But every camper of every age comes to camp looking for joy and fun and all of the things we all need. So, and for me, sorry, I've got my notes in my dark, so I can't really see very well. So we have all of the stuff. We had all of the stuff before COVID, all of the things we, rely on to help us through, whether it's PMS or anxiety or, aches and pains or whatever. We've been accumulating all this stuff. We talk to friends. I see you guys in the Facebook group asking each other for advice on stuff. So we had all of this stuff just in our regular lives, and we're still struggling to feel good about ourselves and feel healthy and alive and still taking care of family members. Well, then Q 2020, and now all of a sudden you got a pandemic. So we're already dealing with all of our shit. And now we're sweating every day, day in and day out, worried about our loved ones and their health and trying to protect everybody else. And then that becomes a whole other burden for us to carry. And then you cue 2022, and now we got a goddamn war. So now we got to worry about the whole fucking planet. And the worst part is we already have all this stuff. We already have all the things that we were trying to make us feel better. So now what do? Now what's the next step? And that's why we're here tonight. And that's why we've got Dr. Fiona Matatel and Heather Grant to come and give us some good basic information to just, help us get back to some of the basics, help us understand some of the things we're going through, give us some direction. They're not going to help us with everything we need to know tonight, but it's going to be a good start for us. So anyways, I am super excited to have you guys. I have some housekeeping at the very end I want to come back to. We have a Bubbles camp slated for next month, which I'll share the date tomorrow in the Facebook group. We're doing Bubbles with our booze counselor. She hasn't had the stage to herself in a long time, so we've got that. Get your Hot Flash badge in the online store. You can load up on some merch. And one more thing too, I'm going to be sharing some more information. I recently connected with the Alberta Women's Health Foundation, Jenny Scriven, who I think is in our Facebook feed tonight. And I don't know if you guys have heard of some of the work they're doing, but they're doing a ton of research on women's health. A lot of the clinical trials have been done based on men, and then they just apply that research to us, even though we are completely different than men. So they've been sharing a lot of the stuff that they're working on, from women's health to mental health to pregnancy, everything. So I'm going to be sharing some of those resources with you guys over the upcoming weeks. I'm really happy to share some of the information with them. So let's have some fun. We have our booze counselor. We've got the J9 with some songs, and then we're going to bring up Dr. Fiona and then our special guest, Heather Grant. So welcome, campers. Happy hoo-ha, and I will see you guys shortly.
Got me? Ah, darn, I was so close. Okay, hey, welcome campers. So glad to be back on a little hot, a little cold, a little up, a little down. I think we got it all covered for you a little bit on the booze train tonight. But oh my gosh, I just wanted to take a quick flash note back to hearing the word summer camp. Now this is something special. You guys who don't know about summer camp, we are like vaginas out. I'm talking, we are all in. It's the most fun time. And all of those things that are kind of going on for you at summer camp, you will see the Camp Hoo-Ha Crew-Ha walking around with fanny packs. And inside those fanny packs are magical things that will cover all your needs. So don't you worry about all those little things or all the things you're worried about people bringing or not bringing or what this is going to be like. You just come and you show up and all of the magic happens at camp. So get on there. I'm excited for that. We haven't had one for a while. And it's at a new spot this year. So this will be an adventure even for the Crew-Has. So anyways, for tonight, I've got my charcuterie going. My charcuterie is always set when we've got drinks going. And we decided, tonight with menopause, each kind of drink has a little bit of a story for me. And, you know, wine is typically our downtime downer. And tequila happens to be an upper. So with these up and downs, with these hot and colds, this is kind of what we're playing with tonight. So, you know, the first one I thought I'd take you down was the tour of the Alamo Chardonnay. So those of you, I hope you were able to find it. This one is super available. It's out there. It's inexpensive. It's really affordable. And, you know, don't give me any of that, anything but Chardonnay or stuff going on. This stuff is exceptional. I'll tell you why. We are in Mendoza in Argentina. So we are based here. We're taking a trip down to the foothills of the Andes. Now the Andes Mountains, you can see it right on their label here. This is a famous producer in Mendoza. This is Nicolas Catena. He has a huge family. I've had the privilege of being down to visit this winery. And if you ever get to go, the winery actually looks like a Mayan temple, and its view and backdrop is the Andes Mountains. It's the most stunning thing I've ever seen. Now, what's key to remember about not just the Chardonnay grown here, but any wines grown in Mendoza, these are some of the highest altitude vineyards in the world. And so what that means for us is that we think about grape growing, farming. These grapes are up really high. They get unbelievable sunshine all day long, but the temperature is cool because it's in the mountains. So it actually gets to hang onto the vines for an extra long time. Extra exceptional ripeness happens in these grapes. And it just brings out, this one for me is like ripe apples and stone fruits. And they're drinking it with the snow melt water. It just feels kind of auspicious and special and spiritual and magical. And I'm kind of into that right now. So I hope you guys enjoyed that one. It should really be an easy one. And if you're not into crazy Chardonnay, then, try this one because it is got some richness from the mountains, but it's definitely lean enough. It's not going to kill you with butter and oak. It's not overly oaked, which can be a little bit too much. So cheers. Give that one a little swirl. See if you can find any stones, any fruit in there. Always give it a mouthwash. Always give it a swallow. Always give it a go and say, what's happening there? Woo, little tart acidity is happening. You got great palate, front and back. And that'll pretty much go with anything. Grilled chicken, grilled vegetables. You can even go for a seafood on this one and meats. Like it's gonna hold up. You got everything going on in there. So I hope you guys like that one. And now if you know, and I did it this way because we need an upper. We need to get up. We need to go up. This is my beautiful jalapeno margarita, but my jalapenos have sunk. If you aren't too crazy about jalapenos, I don't know if you guys have found these yet, but the tamed jalapenos, jalapenos, we'll just call them jalapenos. Those tamed jalapenos are damn good. And you can find them in their deli sliced if you can't do like the real ones that are kind of crazy that you're supposed to cut with gloves on and never touch your eyes with. Yeah, go for the tamed ones. Those ones are in a jar. They're lovely, and they go excellent with nachos too. So yes, love this. This one, if you guys made the recipe, came with the fresh squeezed limes. Lime juice, you'll notice a little different if you're doing like from a jar. This one also has a squeeze of orange in it, so that could switch it up for you. They call this one a skinny one. This is the skinny margarita. I'm not really sure what's too skinny about it. It's got agave in it. Sugar is sugar is sugar. So that all counts. So you can go light on the sugar, heavy on the sugar, light on the booze, or heavy on the booze. And it'll come together. But this one is really nice. And this one we chose because it's got a little heat, a little spice, and it will cool you down. So the hot and the cool issue for me, I think I've been perimenopausal for a while. I'm now in full menopause. I know it's hard to tell, I know, but I'm telling you, the night sweats are real. So I am really looking to Dr. Fiona to help me out with the night sweats and what we can do about those. I'm talking full pajamas in the middle of the night. I'm changing. So then I upgraded to an 8 sleep. If any of you guys have heard of this, this is life changing. This is like a mattress cover that runs cooling water all the way through it. I set this temperature. I put my weighted blanket and duvet on, and it's a game changer. So that one was a solve. But I do have an unresolved, and I need your guys' help. So this is what happened to me. I have this COVID cat. This kitten came to us in COVID. So it's not very old, maybe not even 8 months, and my family's never had a pet. So we've been watching this beautiful little kitty go into heat. Now, I've never seen anything like this. I need you guys to help me because she writhes on the ground and she puts her tail around and reveals all of her parts, and she is climbing the walls. And I watched her and I was like, good Lord, I wish I still felt like that. And my husband, bless him, hugged me and said, God damn, I wish you did too. So you guys, I need your help. 2 things. Dr. Fiona, what damn hormones took that away from me? I need to find that and how to get it back. And number 2, campers, if you have ever had an animal that has had babies, I think I need help. I think that my cat is knocked up and I don't know what to do. And I need all of you who don't have one and who would like one to tell me and message me, because I will have kittens soon. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So help me out. And on that note, you can move straight to your ups, your downs, and we'll listen to Janine tell us about our cum spots, and it'll make everything better. Love you. Cheers.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I thought Carla would talk longer. Okay, so I'm not like Mel. I don't own anything neon, but I have my Farrah Fawcett curls. Can you even see them? Can you see my leg warmers? So that's my hot flash bash. I'm far too young for this kind of thing, right, Fiona? Okay, so ladies, this is so exciting. Learning about all the things that are special about our bodies. This is so great. I don't want to talk about it. I just don't. I do, but I don't. I feel like I'm trying to push it off. I'm trying to pretend like it's not going to happen. It's not going to come. This is not time for me yet. I'm not ready for it, but if you're not learning, you're not living. So bring it on, Fiona. Teach us. We're ready for it. Then we'll be good to go. My daughter, she'd kill me if she knew I was saying this on the internet. She's 13, just got her first period last month. So we're dealing with all of that, learning about the changes, emotional, physical, mental, everything that goes along with it, which is awful. And trying to navigate our way through that while I try to navigate my way through what's happening to me. So it's kind of a learning situation for both of us. Anyway, I unfortunately did not get the chance to write a new song for you guys tonight. I'm actually supposed to be at a gala getting an award, but I ditched it for you guys because that is how much I love my campers. And there's something really special going on tonight that I needed to be here for. So this first song is a dedication to a very special woman without whom our high hoo-ha wouldn't be here, which means hoo-ha wouldn't be here. And this special woman is 69, dude. So this is for her. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mama Hoo. hoo-ha. Happy birthday to you. I hope you're watching, Mama Hoo-ha. Happy birthday. We love you. Thanks for giving us Mel. So the song I am going to sing for you was written for Sex Ed Camp, and it encompasses all the important things we need to know as women. This is kind of funny. I'm going to tell this story and hope no one in my household is listening. You know, it's one of those things you think in your like 20s that you're all like sexy and you know everything. And then you hit like your 40s and you're like, damn, now I know. Now I know what's up. And maybe there's things like, I don't know, fuzzy handcuffs under the bed or something. I don't know. My daughter last week was looking for something in my room. And I had gone upstairs after she had been in there, and there was a bucket under the bed. And it's pulled out halfway under the bed, and the lid's kind of askew, and I'm like, oh my God. What? So nonchalant, I'm like, so, were you in my room? What were you looking for? Did you find anything interesting? She swears she didn't. She's like, oh no, the cat went into your bed and I had to get him out. And I'm like, okay. And I feel like it's just one of those things where it's like, you know, like sisters, we're not going to talk about it. We're going to let it go. So, but that's what's happening in the world right now, in my household. So this song was originally written for Sex Ed Camp, but definitely applies to today's camp as well. And it's called, it's very educational. And one thing that I have to know, and even though I can't see you campers, I need you guys to raise your hands. If you know what, actually you can click the like button on Facebook if you know what a dib 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 dob 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 is. Because this song, being very educational, touches on that exactly. That is, it's from the Boy Scouts, and dib, 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 dob, dob, dob. It's part of the pledge where they say, do your best, do your best, do your best, do our best, do our best, do our best. And it's 3 fingers. Dib, 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 dob, 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 3 fingers. So here it is. This song is called Come Spot Come. It's not like my regular songs where I try and make you laugh and I do cheap jokes and sexual content. This is very educational, very important information. Please listen closely. If you want to quiver, then you have to come hither. If you want to come, then listen to this song. Think of Scout's honor, only this is Scout's inner. Take that dip, dip, dob, dob, and dip, dob, dab it in your hoo-ha. Go past your britches, about 2.5 inches, between 10 and 2. If a clock was in you, stroke clear from pressure, till you find your treasure. Feels like a small bump, like the tip of your nose, front of your pelvis, hips shaking like Elvis. Find it in your nose. It's where your dip, dip, dob, dob, dabber has to go. You just found your G-spot. Come hither and your C-spot. You think you're gonna P-spot, but you're not. It's called, shit, I always forget this part. It's relaxing, you will C-spot. It's where you need to be spot. Should be called your cum spot, but it's not. It's called your G-spot, and it'll set you free spot. You gotta trust me spot and give it a shot. A cum shot, cum spot, cum. That's it, campers. I hope you learned something today. Thank you. Love you. Bye.
Amazing. I am not going to take up any more time because I want to leave as much time as possible for our camp counselor tonight. Dr. Fiona Matatel came to me when I first started camp and said, I want to be your camp gynecologist. And I said, welcome. And that's what she's been for the last 5 years, I guess. It's been a long time. She's done our women's health event several times, once online and a couple times in person. And women's health is such a broad subject that we wanted to break it down and be able to answer some specific questions and dive deeper into menopause. So without further ado, our camp counselor, camp gynecologist, Dr. Fiona Matatel.
All right. Thanks for having me tonight, you guys. This is amazing. Can everybody hear me okay? What do you think, Rob? We're good? Okay. I love Lou. I want her in my life. She has a gin sponsor, a lube sponsor, a dildo sponsor. She's everything. And for someone to be paid to wank is a dream. I'm happy to be paid to help women get to the point of wanking, and that's part of my job as a gynecologist. So I'm just going to share with you guys some pictures and hopefully some good education tonight. Let's see if we can make this happen. I'm one drink into the evening, so I really hope that this all works. All right, are we working? Awesome. Okay, so this is the Menopause Hot Flash Bash, and I think some of you might know me from previous Camp Hoo Ha events. I'm Fiona. I'm an obstetrician gynecologist in Calgary, which means the whole focus of my life is vaginas and uteruses. And I am so happy to talk to you guys about this because in my background, when I was doing my training in women's health, we learned all about the anatomy and the hormones and everything else. And menopause was a bit of a topic that wasn't discussed a whole lot. So it's something that a lot of us have gone to learn more about and to explore more. So not only can we help patients, but be prepared for those of us who are women who do women's health, help ourselves. And I was really glad that I did some extra training in this because about 5 years ago, I started to get some pretty wicked symptoms. So, as I started learning a bit more about menopause, like I said, I was getting myself prepared and just wondering if anybody else has felt like this. And even now, as I'm talking to you, whenever I get a little bit stressed or worried, I get a hot flash. So I'm actually getting one live right in front of me right now, which is fantastic. It is what it is. So for about 4 years, I was having real trouble with sleep and hot flashes and just not feeling myself. So I was like, okay, you need to figure out what's going on. I kind of know what's going on from my work. I was in to see my family doctor, figured out a few things, made sure everything was tip top, and got on some treatment. And things have actually been really good since. So I'm hoping tonight to help to empower all of you. Because I really believe, this is a quote that I really is part of my ethos of how I practice in women's health, is I really feel that knowing what is happening to your body is empowerment. And thinking about the story with Janine's daughter, you know, just getting her first period, and our house tween, our youngest in our house, just got her first period this month too, is when we were in school and when these kids are in school, they get classes on what's going to happen when you get your first period, what's happening, what's changing to your body. But we don't get that in midlife and going through menopause. There's no classes for this. And so I'm hoping that tonight can maybe make up for a bit of that. But I also realize that in tonight we can talk about a couple of things. We cannot cover all of this. But there is an amazing resource that finally came out last year, and it's where this quote is from. And if you don't have this book already, you need to get it. So Jen Gunter is a gynecologist originally from Winnipeg, but works in the States. I've mentioned her at previous camps because she writes amazing feminist approach to women's health. In the book, The Menopause Manifesto is all you need to know about menopause. It's actually what I suggest our trainees in gynecology read to learn about menopause. So if you want to take a deep dive into any of this tonight, do yourself a favor, get it from the library, borrow it from a friend. It's an excellent, excellent resource. So what we're going to talk about, I tried to bring this down into bite-sized things that we can get through in tonight's session. So we're going to concentrate on 2 hormones. Sexual health is more than just 2 hormones, but we're going to focus on the 2 big players tonight. The first one is estrogen, and the second one is progesterone. So estrogen and progesterone are the 2 main hormones that are made by our ovaries. And estrogen has a couple of different versions that are there present in our bodies that are made by our ovaries. Estrogen is made from the time you start that first period until menopause, and it goes up and down, and we'll see patterns of that. Estrogen has receptors in all parts of our body. Our brains have estrogen receptors, our breasts have estrogen receptors, our hearts do, our uterus does, our bones do. So estrogen made by our ovaries has this powerful effect across our whole body system. Progesterone, on the other hand, is made by the ovaries just around the time of ovulation. And so we don't see that all month long as much as estrogen, but it's a really important second player. Like estrogen, progesterone can have effects on lots of parts of our body. So again, brain, bone, heart, it affects lots of different parts of our body. So these are 2 very powerful hormones. Really important, we're going to get back to this in a bit, is they can have effects that work together, like synergistically, but they can also work against each other. And a really important place where they work against each other is in the uterus. So estrogen in the uterus causes the lining to get really thick, getting ready for pregnancy, and progesterone helps to thin out that lining. What happens is at times when you've got more estrogen relative to progesterone, you can get really thick lining of your uterus and end up having really heavy periods. When it flips the other way, you can have very light periods. So how these 2 interact is really important in some parts of the body, like the uterus. So we're going to look at what happens to estrogen and progesterone through our whole lives as women. And then we're going to focus in a bit more on perimenopause and menopause. So pre-puberty, so before any of us had a period, our ovaries are pretty quiet. They really don't make very much estrogen or progesterone, so pretty low levels of both hormones. Then when they start to wake up, like is happening in some of our houses with our teenage kids, is as the ovaries wake up and start to make hormones, you'll see I've actually got them backwards. This is terrible. The purple is actually the estrogen, where it goes up and down through a menstrual cycle, and the progesterone, which is actually in pink, comes up just in the second half of the cycle. In those years where you are able to ovulate, and if you want to conceive and have a baby, you see there's sort of this nice up and down pattern. It's almost like a beautiful orchestration, up and down every month. And that is for someone who you expect to have a very regular period. That goes on for most people until the early to mid 40s, which is when this elusive thing called perimenopause hits. And I think it was on the Facebook group, but there's a great video that was CBC put out about, like, I've got all these weird symptoms. Is it perimenopause? And the answer is, yeah, it is, because perimenopause, there's lots of different symptoms that can happen. What happens to the ovarian production of hormones in perimenopause is they go out of whack. It is like a roller coaster. So in the example here, you can see there was one cycle that looked pretty regular and usual. Then there was no hormones for a while. Then the estrogen's like hugely overshooting, and there's still very little progesterone. So what happens in those perimenopausal years, so those years leading up to that last period, is because of that hormonal roller coaster, some women do suffer a lot of symptoms. So that could be hot flashes, which we'll talk more about. It could be huge mood swings, sleep differences, and also something that I see a lot in my office is really crazy bleeding. Periods are not as regular as they used to be. They can be spaced out, they can be closer together. So perimenopause is this time of fluctuation, and things can really get out of control and really wacky. But the good news is when you're through that perimenopause, which on average lasts about 7 years of symptoms, it is clear sailing. Because when you get to that, after that final period, you go back to a position where the estrogen and progesterone levels are actually really quite calm. It does take the body some time to adjust to that. So you can still have some of those bothersome symptoms of hot flashes and night sweats that can project into menopause, but eventually for the majority of women, they do actually get better. And one thing I really appreciated with Lou's opening was how she approaches menopause. And that is how I am trying to approach it. It is a time of celebration. It's a time of freedom. You don't have to worry about getting periods. You don't have to worry about getting pregnant. Hopefully you're in a place in your life where, you know, responsibilities are starting to ease off. You see the kids are getting out and away. Your career, whatever your journeys are in a place where you have wisdom and experience to bring to that. I was brought up to fear menopause, and I think that was really out of a misogynistic world that we have grown up in, and that really we should be not fearing menopause, but celebrating the freedom it brings. And really, if you look at it, most women, when they are freed of these biological issues, can have their best years ever. And so I think I'm hoping I can impress on you tonight that we're going to learn about biology, but really we should celebrate what's coming and not fear it. We're going to talk about a couple of different organ systems and things that can go a bit haywire. Like I said, the most common thing I see in my gynecology practice is what I call menstrual mayhem. And because of those changes with hormones up and down, we can see a change in bleeding patterns. It's really interesting. I mean, you'll hear stories. Some women, they have a regular cycle, and then just stop and they're in menopause and it's been no big deal. And fantastic for them. So jealous. It's really nice if that is you. And that's kind of like, you know, you're listening to that great rock song and it's got a predictable ending and bang, it's over. Some people, however, have periods that sort of spread out a little bit more. And that's like that song that just sort of fades away quietly. And then you're like, is it over? And then you're like, oh, I guess I haven't heard it in a while. And so some people have that kind of pattern to the end of their periods. Then there are the surprise ones, and those are the most annoying, where it's like you think it's the end of the song and then you wait a few seconds and oh no, the guitar's back. And so some people do have those little like surprise moments of bleeding, and sometimes it's trying to sort out, is that a problem, is it not? And those are reasons that you'd be in to see your family doctor to check on those changes you can see in bleeding patterns. The other thing is sometimes it's hard to know if you're in menopause or not. And as I see it, menopause is really, it's a label for a stage of life, just like puberty is. And for some people who maybe aren't having periods, so that could be someone who, let's say, had their uterus removed, so they had a hysterectomy for whatever reason. They might, like I had, have an IUD in the uterus that prevents periods. So you're like, I'm not having a period. Is it the IUD or is it that I'm in menopause? It could be someone who's had a medical procedure to try and reduce bleeding and they've got no periods for that. So sometimes it's hard to like hang a hat on like, am I in menopause or not? And those are specific things that, you know, you could always check in with your doctor about. There are sometimes tests we can do to help sort that out, but really it's just a label. And I'm not focused if a patient in front of me is in menopause or not. What I'm focused on is, what is her quality of life? Does she have issues? How can we help let her live her best life possible? So a very common question I get in the office is about some of the body changes you can expect in menopause. And often they're things that we don't necessarily look forward to. And in the Facebook group before, there were some questions about skin changes, like does your skin get a bit thinner? Can it get more wrinkled? Some people notice a change in hair growth, and those are all actually fairly common changes. If you think about when you're going through puberty, you do have some of those changes as well. And so these are a continuation of some of those changes. One thing I really wanted to talk about for a few minutes was weight. And the reason I wanted to talk about that is it comes up so commonly. And to be fully honest, this was the scariest thing for me as I was knowing about menopause and facing it was, how am I going to do with weight? Because I have really worked hard to maintain a healthy weight my whole life. And I was not interested in what I was reading about in the literature, which is that the average weight gain through menopausal transition is 3 kilograms. And I had zero interest in gaining weight through menopausal transition. I'll give you the good news and the bad news about all of this. The bad news is it may not be preventable. The bad news is also that the weight that's gained is actually fat. Usually we lose bone mass and muscle mass as we transition through menopause, and we gain fat. And the fat that we tend to gain, and I'm going to show you, like, it's right around here, right around your upper belly. And that's what we call visceral fat. That is not healthy fat, and it does lead to challenges with extra risk of heart disease and diabetes. So as well as not looking great because you can't fit your same waist size as you used to, it's actually not great for your health. So having the knowledge that this was about to hit me, but not wanting to be part of this weight gain, I've done a lot of diving into the literature to see, okay, what research has been done to see what can we do to prevent this. And I wish I could tell you there was a magic pill for this, but there is not. Basically, the solutions are kind of what you would hear from your grandmother, and they're hard. They're not easy, but they're worth it. And so you all know what I'm probably going to be telling you. So exercise, and exercise, not only like the cardiovascular workout, like remember back in the 80s, you're all doing aerobics. That is great exercise. However, part of really good exercise in menopausal transition is weight-bearing exercise. So remember I was telling you your bone density and your muscle density reduce. You need to challenge your bones and your muscles. So you need to like put on your big girl panties, go into the weight section of the gym and start lifting weights, start running and impacting your joints. That is really going to make the biggest difference in terms of weight control through that transition. The other things are food. And I love food. I went out and got Village ice cream last night. I love my food. It seems that some dietary changes can help with that weight gain. So looking at less processed foods, so making things yourself, controlling what you're putting on your plate a bit more, reducing portion size, and really watching out for simple carbohydrates are all really the best things you can do to try and control that weight. I hate to tell you that, but it's the truth. The other two things are a little bit harder. One is sleep, and sleep is so tied in with overall health, but especially body weight. So trying to get a good night's sleep. And I don't know if any of you've noticed this, but I used to be able to drink caffeine up until after dinner time and still get a good night's sleep. That changes as you get older. So you need to look at your caffeine intake later in the day. You need to turn off the phone. You need to dim the lights. You need to do all those like good sleep hygiene things. In Jen's book, she talks about using the bedroom for two things, sleep and sex. You don't do work in bed. Just use your bedroom environment just for those two big S's. And then the last thing is stress. And I think for those of us who are transitioning through menopause in the pandemic is really hard because there's so many external stressors, whether it's the pandemic or the war or the political environment or work stresses. It's so, you can't control all of those. So it's finding strategies to deal with the stresses that are thrown at you can be really helpful for weight. So I know I took a few minutes for that, but I think weight is really key in perimenopause and menopause. Brain changes. We're going to talk about three things that are really common. Hot flushes. I think for everybody who's had one, I don't need to tell you what it's about. This internal feeling of heat that just comes up and erupts. And actually in studies where they look at women who are having hot flushes, you can actually measure a temperature difference on their skin. What a hot flush is, it happens in our brain and it's our internal thermostat that's overshooting. So you get a little bit hot, your brain overheat, fixes the thermostat to try and cool you too fast, and then your cooling ends up overheating. So it's a bit of a dysregulation. it seems to be when there's times of change in estrogen levels, not that it's an absolutely low estrogen level, because you don't get hot flushes before your puberty and you don't get them later in menopause. It's in that transition phase. Sleep can be really affected as well. And what we can see is sleep can be affected by the hot flushes themselves. So if you get them at night, we call them night sweats. And we already heard tonight about a nice solution about having a cooling mat. So that could be something that would help relieve those nighttime symptoms. And then the last thing is brain fog. And I certainly felt brain fog. When I felt it going through perimenopause, was a lot like I had when I was pregnant. And just forgetting a few things, forgetting details. And the good news is for brain fog is that it is temporary. As you go through menopause and get into a couple of years after that last period, the brain fog should lift. If it does not lift, then you need to think that there might be something else going on. And the tough thing is all three of these can feed off of each other. So you have a hot flush, which ruins your sleep, and then your brain's not working as well the next day. And so you could get into these cycles. And this was one of the cycles that I got myself into in early perimenopause, that I went to see my family doctor to find a solution to get out of that so that I could function as a doctor and as a mom and as a friend. I want to talk about bones for a few minutes. And bones are not something that we think a lot of, but we should, because I think as women, we probably all have someone in our life who has suffered cancer, or especially breast cancer. However, our chance of having harm done to us in later life from our bones is actually higher than breast cancer. So thinning bones are something that we should all be thinking of. Our bones are their most dense in our 20s, and it's not just menopause. Over time, the bone density decreases. Having a fractured hip as an elderly woman has a huge impact on life expectancy and quality of life and being able to live independently. And there are things we can do in menopause that can improve our bone density and improve how our life journey goes later in life. With bone density, things that we can do to help with our bone density, I think everybody knows, and we've talked about exercise already, challenging our bones, making sure you have a diet that's rich in calcium, getting some vitamin D, get outside. There's free vitamin D available every day. Just get out and get some sunshine. The other things are smoking reduces bone density. So that's something that would be advisable to stop. And with alcohol consumption, and I've got my own gin and tonic here. So I enjoy a glass of alcohol, but I do know that more than 2 glasses of alcohol every day will reduce bone density and increase risk of osteoporosis and bone fracture later in life. The other thing is joint pain is really common in in menopause. And a lot of women start to wonder, do I have arthritis? But interestingly, hormone therapy can actually help with joint pain that's related to menopause. The last organ we're going to talk about is the heart. And I'm really glad that we have somebody here from the Alberta Women's Health Foundation, because they have a great focus on heart health for women. I think we've all been cultured to think that heart attack and cardiovascular disease is a male problem, but in fact, heart attack is the #1 killer of women in Canada. So we should be paying far more attention to our heart health. The risk factors for heart attack for us women is #1, family history, diabetes, high blood pressure, smoking, which we already talked about. But interestingly, an early menopause puts someone at risk for heart attack. There's some other things that might have happened to us in our reproductive life that can also affect our heart health. So curiously, women who have endometriosis are higher risk for heart attack. Women who've had diabetes in pregnancy or high blood pressure in pregnancy are higher risk for heart attack. And one really interesting piece of information that's come out in the last 5 or 6 years out of the research in menopause is women who have more severe hot flashes are higher risk for heart attack than women who don't have hot flashes. So we're starting to understand that those hot flashes that women experience might also be not just a nuisance, but could actually be an indication of something else going on. So not something that you should necessarily ignore. So if you have those risk factors, those are things that would be really important for you to share with your primary care physician to make sure you're doing your best for your heart and your heart health. And one thing I found for myself that I really hope for all of you who are watching is when you're thinking about menopause, menopause transition, we talked about it not being something to fear and something to celebrate, but it's also a really good time to do a self checkup, to say, okay, I've focused on my job and my family. This is a point in time where I need to focus inside and look at my own health and look at what can I do to optimize things for myself, where, and do these, like, where am I going in my life? Have these really good chances to look inward and look after yourself and do a chance for self-reflection. So in terms of all of these things that happen with age, some of them are scary, some of them are bothersome. What is a person to do? What is out there for some help? So I am going to tell you that the most important, most effective treatment for any of the symptoms we've talked about is not something that I need to write you a prescription for. It's something that you can do yourself. Exercise. We already talked about aerobic exercise, putting on some sneakers, getting outside, going for a run, getting in a swimming pool, dancing with the kids, rollerblading, skiing, whatever it is, get out and move your body. Especially if you could add some resistance training to that, whether that's a hard, weights or bands, do something that challenges your muscles and your bones is really important as you age. Also, healthy eating habits. We already talked about reducing processed foods, increasing, like, all the stuff that you know from growing up, eating healthy meats or beans, making sure you've got vegetables and fruits in your diet, really refocusing on that healthy eating habit. Alcohol, we already talked about, and I am not here to tell you that you shouldn't drink, because I would be a total hypocrite. In fact, in consuming alcohol in moderation, many studies show that that is the minimal risk for people. If you choose not to drink, that is totally cool. But making sure that you're not overindulging. So, like, for tonight, we had our beautiful Chardonnay and the margarita. That would be your 2 drinks, and that would be absolutely fine. You're probably not going to do that every night, but if you're keeping it 2 or less drinks per day, you're in a safe zone and you're not impacting your health negatively. And then the last thing is smoking. And, we all grew up in an era where smoking was quite prevalent. I remember living through where my parents were trying to quit because there was all the messaging about quitting smoking, but smoking has a hugely negative effect on health. It actually on its own increases risk of hot flashes, let alone all of the other health issues. So if you are a smoker, whatever tool it would take to help you reduce your cigarette consumption would be fantastic. I wanted to talk really quick about supplements. There are hundreds of products on the shelf that claim to reduce menopausal symptoms, mostly talk about reducing hot flashes and night sweats. One of the challenges I have with this is if I have a patient comes into the office and she says, listen, I'm on evening primrose oil. It's working really great for me. I'd be like, fantastic. You don't need my help for that symptom. But I would not feel comfortable recommending specifically a product. And the reason is based on the studies, but also on some of the quality control. So quickly to tell you about studies, when a physician like me, or like when Heather is talking next, when we look at a study, what we're looking at is, do we have 2 groups of people in the study? And a really good number of those 2 people, are they similar groups of people? One group you give, let's say, the evening primrose oil to, and the other group you give placebo to, and then you follow them forward and see how are they both groups doing. Because what you find in any study on hot flushes is, even in the placebo group, about half of women feel better. And that's true of the medical studies looking at hormone therapy or the non-hormonal prescription drugs. We still see about a 50% improvement in symptoms, which is great, because that tells us the placebo effect, which is working in the brain, that it can be mind over matter. So a hot flush is in the brain, and your brain can actually control some of that. And that's why likely some of the cognitive behavioral therapies and also hypnosis can also help for hot flashes, because they're all in the brain. When you look at the majority of studies on supplements and some of the like soy products, maca root, which was asked about in the Facebook group, what we find is most of the studies don't have that control group with a placebo. So they'll claim 60% of people improved on this product. Well, if they didn't have a placebo group to compare it to, it could have all been placebo, and you could be spending your money on a placebo, which is fine if that's what you choose to spend your money on. The only supplement that seems to have a bit of an improvement over placebo is black cohosh. But even with that, I feel reserved in recommending that, because when they've looked at products on the shelf with black cohosh, most of them don't have what they claim on the product label, and there's a lot of potential contaminants. And in some of the studies out of the US, they actually found antidepressants in the black cohosh products. So without a product that I feel has really good quality control, it's hard for me to recommend that, because I feel like it's a bit of, I'm worried that someone might have harm from that because I don't know what's actually in it. So it's really challenging as a physician to recommend these. If that is the journey and the route that you were choosing to go down, I would certainly recommend that you go to a practitioner, say a naturopath or a physician with experience in this type of medicine to help guide you through that.
What about things like iron, Fiona, or some of the more, traditional, I guess, vitamin or mineral or some of the basic things like that? Is iron something that they should be taking if they're got heavy bleeding or anything like that?
Awesome question, Mel. So absolutely, if someone is having heavy bleeding, they should be on an iron supplement, because that iron is coming out of your uterus, going into the pad or the tampon or the Diva cup and going down the toilet. So you need to replace iron in that way. It would also be not a bad idea to be taking some B vitamins with that. Once you get into the stage of life where you're not having a period, your need for those extra vitamins and minerals is less, other than vitamin D and extra calcium, if you're having a balanced diet. But if you are not able to eat, say, a good range of eggs and meat and vegetables and fruit, that's where you may want to consider a multivitamin in that setting. Other than that, the utility of vitamins is small. So there's always a place for therapies that are not hormone based, and especially for people who, for whatever medical reason, should not be on a hormone. There's been a number of medications that have been tried over the years. Most of these have been studied in women who currently have breast cancer or undergoing treatment, and women who are who are suffering from that disease often have pretty bad hot flashes because of their treatments. And so there's been many studies looking at different kinds of medications, and really there's three categories of drugs that have been tested and shown to reduce hot flashes above placebo. The first is SSRI, SNRI, and those are two related groups of medications that are traditionally used to treat depression and anxiety. So you might know them as Effexor or Paxil. Those are some of the medications in those groups. Interestingly, those medications used at traditionally lower doses than we would use for depression or anxiety can improve hot flashes. And so for some patients, that is a really good fit. There's side effects with those medications that would certainly want to go through with your healthcare practitioner. And one in particular that is bothersome is those medications can reduce libido, which can already be a problem. And I know Heather's going to talk about libido a bit more. So those are a medication option. And especially for someone I find who, let's say you had a lot of trouble with PMS through your 20s and 30s, and during pregnancy and postpartum, moods were a little bit tough. Maybe this group of medications might help with some of the mood symptoms that go along with menopausal transition, as well as hot flashes. So they can sometimes help with both groups of symptoms. Another medication that's used commonly is clonidine, which is a very old blood pressure medication, and that one can help with hot flushes as well. We don't really understand how it works, but it does. And then gabapentin, which is an older treatment that was used for epilepsy, and it's also sometimes used in chronic pain. Gabapentin is a medication that can work well for hot flushes, and especially with nighttime hot flushes. Gabapentin is a medication that you would slowly go on and come off. So it's something that you would work closely with your physician about that medication. I want to take a little bit of the last bit of time to talk about hormones, because hormones they've been around for treating menopause symptoms since the 60s. They have a very interesting history, and Jen's got a whole chapter on the history of hormone therapy, which is fascinating from a feminist perspective. But hormone therapy is hands down the most effective treatment for hot flushes and night sweats. So hormone therapy is a big term for a number of different ways that we can treat. And really it's using those two hormones we touched on at the beginning. So estrogen and progesterone. So estrogen on its own does really reduce hot flushes. It has some other effects, which we'll talk about. Progesterone needs to be used if the person taking estrogen has a uterus. So if you're on hormone therapy and you're on estrogen, you have a uterus, you need to be on progesterone as well, because with estrogen alone, you would start to regrow the lining of the uterus. You would have really annoying bleeding, and it could actually cause some abnormal cells in the uterus. But if for whatever reason a person doesn't have a uterus, she would only need estrogen. She wouldn't have to be on the progesterone. But the progesterone sometimes we use to help with the symptoms. So progesterone can also help with some of the hot flush symptoms and can sometimes help with sleep as well. So sometimes we'll use one and sometimes we'll use both together. And to make it really confusing, estrogen can be absorbed orally, so you can take it in pill, but you can also take estrogen really well through your skin. So you'll see there's estrogen patches and estrogen gels. Progesterone can be taken orally, and there's certain forms of progesterone that can be absorbed through the skin, but they are really only in patch form that work that way. Progesterone, interestingly, can also be taken vaginally, but that's getting into like high-level menopause therapy. I'm going to take you through, I hope this is not too boring for you guys on a Friday night, but I think it's really important. Like I said, I really want to empower you with information. There was one huge trial that I am sure most of you actually remember because it was on the cover of Time magazine. It was all over the papers when it was released, and it came out in 2000. So it was called the WHI, or Women's Health Initiative Study. The reason it's important is it's one of the largest clinical trials to date, and it was done on hormone therapy. This trial, I think it's really important for you to just come with me for a few minutes to understand it, because there's some really interesting take-home pieces from it that has changed how we look at hormone therapy. So in this trial, like I talked about before, they had two groups of people, and they were very similar groups of women. One group were on hormones and one group were on a placebo. So the pills looked just like the hormone therapy group, but there was nothing in them. It was just sugar. Women who had a uterus, they were on estrogen and progesterone, like we talked about. But there were a group of women who'd had a hysterectomy, so they were only on estrogen. And I'm going to show you what the results showed, because what was in the papers was quite overblown, but I want to show what the actual data is. So I know this is right out of a talk I give to physicians. So I know it's a lot of information, but I really want to empower you with this information. So what this graph shows you is, if you'll see on the left-hand side, cases of these events happening for every 10,000 women, and this was in women who were between ages of 50 and 59 in the study. The dark green are the women who were on estrogen and progesterone, and the green is the group who were on placebo. And it was a very specific estrogen and progesterone combo. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of different combos we could do, but this was the one they studied. CHD is heart disease. So you saw there was a little bit more heart disease in the group who were on hormones than the group who weren't. But keep in mind, the women who weren't on hormone therapy still had heart attacks. Stroke, again, a little bit higher for the women who are on hormones. VTE is blood clot. So that could be a blood clot in the leg that you hear about when you're on an airplane, or even more seriously, a blood clot in your lung. You can see that was a big increase for women who are on hormones compared to women who weren't. Breast cancer, that's BRCA, that was higher in the group who were on hormones compared to not. But again, note that women who weren't on hormones still got breast cancer. Colon cancer was a little bit lower for hormones. Hip fracture was a little bit lower for hormones. But interestingly, overall death rates were lower for the women who were on hormones compared to women who weren't. So this was very interesting data. And a lot of us looked at this and went, okay, there are benefits to being on hormone therapy, but there's definitely some big risks here. I want to show you the second part of the study, which did not get a lot of attention in the media. So this was the group of women who had a hysterectomy. And often I have women in the office who've had their uterus out because of their heavy periods, and they're dying with hot flashes, and they're afraid to go on hormones based on that other data. But really, this is what applies to them. So interestingly, heart disease actually went down in the group who were on just estrogen. Stroke was the same. Blood clot was a little bit higher. Breast cancer went down. Colon cancer went down. Hip fracture went up a little bit, and overall death rate went down as well. So when I see a patient who has a hysterectomy and she's dying of hot flashes and she's so worried of going on hormone therapy because someone's told her that she's going to get breast cancer for going on estrogen, based on this study, that actually is not the case. And I'm going to show you some really interesting information. So this, again, we're getting really detailed into medical literature here, but this looked at women who were in the study over 13 years after the study had finished. This is the risk of the number of women who would get breast cancer over this time. The top line, which is the blue, is the women who were in the part of the study where they took estrogen and progesterone. The two middle lines, the green and the red, are really close together, and that was the placebo groups from both groups. And then the purple line on the bottom was the women who were just on estrogen. So what was really interesting out of this is that women who were on estrogen and progesterone, their risk of breast cancer for the first 5 years was the same as the placebo group. But if they were on it longer than 5 years was when we started to see the increased risk of breast cancer. So that is where you may find, if you're starting hormone therapy and you've got a physician writing a prescription, they'll tell you we should maybe at 5 years think about stopping hormone therapy based on this graph. But what's interesting is the type of estrogen that they used in this study over time showed a reduction in breast cancer over 13 years. And so from this data is now over a decade old, and there's been much more work built on this to see, can we find the perfect hormone therapy that would reduce risk of hot flushes and help with sleep, keep your bones healthy, keep your heart healthy, but also reduce risk of breast cancer. That is the hope, and that we're slowly getting towards a hormone therapy that would check all of the boxes for us. We're not there yet. We don't have a perfect therapy, but we actually are seeing improvements, which is wonderful to actually see improvements in women's health. So the take home really from looking at just this one study in menopause is that whenever you're starting hormones, like any other medication, you need to look at risks and benefits of that medication for you. I want you to understand that there are many different hormones and combinations that we can use for hormone therapy. And so that needs to be really targeted and individualized to that person. And so when I see a patient in the office to talk about starting hormones, this is not a 10-minute visit. It's a long conversation and trying to hone in what would be the best risks and benefits based on her own, risk of heart disease, her family history. So it's very individualized.
Fiona, what about, somebody had asked about the progesterone only pill as a way to sort of manage just, I guess, some of the symptoms. Like, what would be the purpose of the mini pill that was progesterone only, and who would you recommend that to?
Awesome question, Mel. So progesterone, remember we talked about way at the beginning, progesterone thins out the lining of the uterus. So in that perimenopause where the ovaries are like pumping out all sorts of estrogen, if you were taking just progesterone, you would expect that the lining of the uterus should thin out, and so you would have way reduced bleeding. And I dropped it at the beginning, like I did that myself, by using, instead of a progesterone only pill, taking it orally, I had the progesterone in my uterus in the form of an IUD. The other way people can take progesterone only is there's a new implant that you have put in your arm. Those are all three really great ways to get some progesterone in to reduce bleeding, but not have extra estrogen on board, because estrogen does seem to be what carries the risk of things like blood clot. Now, a person might find that that progesterone only pill might help a little bit with hot flashes, probably not as much as estrogen would, but it'd be a fine thing to try. Does that answer the question, Mel?
And is there anybody that you would not recommend? Like, that seems like there should be a long lineup of people just the IUD. And I know lots of girls that got an IUD for perimenopause. So is there anyone that you would not recommend that to, or who's not a good candidate for that, I guess?
Yeah, so there's a few people who should not be on progesterone. Most importantly is someone who has a cancer that would have a progesterone receptor. So many breast cancers have a progesterone receptor. So someone who is being treated currently for breast cancer, progesterone of any sort would not be our first go-to medication and would only be used in discussions with their oncologist. Sometimes people's uteruses might not fit an IUD really well, so that might be someone who'd be better off if they wanted to have progesterone therapy, would be the implant or the pill, because a uterus does need to be a certain shape to fit an IUD. But also it's important that you've ruled out other things that could be causing heavy bleeding. So there might be fibroids or these like benign lumps in the uterus. So an IUD might not help in that setting. So there might be other reasons for the bleeding that the progesterone wouldn't be an ideal therapy for. But I agree with you. The progesterone IUD has been a game changer in women's health, and we've seen a huge reduction in hysterectomy rate in Canada with the introduction of that IUD, because it's allowed women to reduce bleeding without having to evict their organ, which has been a godsend. So overall, this is a very simplified chart of risks and benefits of hormone therapy. And you'll see I put lots of asterisks because there's lots of like, in this situation, but not that. So really, like, the things that you could hold down as absolute truths is benefits of hormone therapy: hot flushes and night sweats reduction. Absolutely the most effective treatment we have. In terms of bone density, there's one other class of drugs that improves bone density, but estrogen is on par with that other medication. And until those other medications were around, estrogen was the #1 treatment for osteoporosis. So we know that those are two definite benefits of hormone therapy. Where there's a star is, one of them is heart health. And remember, I was telling you earlier, we need to pay a lot of attention to the health of our heart. When it comes to hormones and heart, taking exogenous hormones or taking like prescription hormones, timing is everything. If you were to start hormone therapy within 10 years of that last period, we actually see an improvement in heart health. But if you delay starting hormones till later, so more than a decade past that last period, it actually increases the risk of things like heart attack. So you see it's both in the benefits and in the risks category, because it's all about timing. And these are where sitting down with your prescribing physician or your nurse practitioner to go through the details of, okay, where are you in that transition? Is it safe or unsafe from a heart perspective for you to be on hormone therapy? I put an asterisk beside sleep because there's not a ton of studies directly looking at sleep and hormones, but if we can improve hot flushes and night sweats, sleep often follows suit. And as we talked about earlier, there's so much interplay between stress and sleep and heart health and weight, and so they can all work together. And if you get out of sync with one of them, things can start to fall apart. I also put down depression as well. Interestingly, women who have mild to moderate depression who are put on hormone therapy, many do see an improvement in their mood and then their anxiety. So for some women, hormone therapy can also improve their mood. Sometimes it's hard to tease that out, like, is that because their sleep's better and they're not having a hot flash all the time and they're not feeling cranky from that? But it probably has sort of a synergy that it kind of puts things back into play. Risks of hormone therapy. Blood clot is one that we really, really watch for. It is even a slight increased risk for the best hormone that we have, whether it's through your skin or orally. Blood clot risk is slightly elevated. So we do need to counsel women for that, and also knowing what is the sign of a blood clot. Interestingly, your risk of blood clot is far higher when you're pregnant, and far higher.
Oh. Uh-oh. Do you want me to jump back on? Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Am I up right now? We've got frozen Fiona right now, so we're going to give her a second to hopefully come back on. Do we want to bring Heather up for a minute? Have we got Heather ready?
I think I'm back. I don't know what the hell just happened. Okay,
well, you had
let me try this again.
Opposite of a hot flash, you had a frozen episode.
We did. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, are we back? I swear it wasn't the gin and tonic. I'm so sorry, guys. Okay, it was probably just getting way too boring. I'm almost finished, I promise. Okay, so I put a star beside gallbladder as well, because some forms of the oral tablet hormone therapy can increase your risk of needing your gallbladder removed. All right, so that was, I know, terribly dry, no pun intended, section on menopause. And so what I wanted to do was introduce my friend and colleague. Mel, I hope you're okay if I introduce Heather. Dr. Heather Grant is an obstetrician gynecologist who I worked with for years here in Calgary. She has relocated to BC, and she is the baddest ass person I know in my life. She goes up against everything. She's got a pussy hat. She's everything. So over to you, Heather.
Look at that. Hello. And me without my pussy hat here. So I did warmers for today. But they were my leg warmers from when I was in grade 6, so they didn't fit. And I also brought my badges. Much different of affixing them, but Mel tells us we're not allowed sashes. So you've gone through Fiona's talk. I'm just going to close this Facebook on here because it's got reverse feed there for me. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit. I know Fiona mentioned the dryness, and that actually does segue quite well into what we're about to talk about here. Because we're going to talk about the effects of menopause on the genital urinary system. And I can't actually see at this point if we've pulled up the slideshow. It's not up.
I have it. I will fire it up again.
Yeah, and we'll keep this as short as possible because you guys seem to have a lot of questions for Fiona. But it is important to mention, like, when you do hear about the menopause transition, you often hear about the hot flashes and the night sweats. Those are called your vasomotor symptoms, and they're sort of how your brain is adjusting to your new hormone levels. As Fiona talked about having a thermoreceptor in your brain. It gets reset and reset every time that estrogen level changes a little bit, and that's why the hot flashes are prolonged. Once your tissue, peripheral tissue we call it, or sort of tissue farther away, is deprived of its estrogen supply, it can start to have symptoms. You can end up having symptoms such as burning, itching, pain during sex, and dryness. And that's 80% of women with menopause actually experience this. So it is a big topic to go through, in that it can affect you quite significantly. I'm still waiting to see if the slides.
I'm still trying.
Still working on it. See, Fiona's really all these lovely.
Try this again. How's that?
Here we go. So this is Fiona's house team that has come up with all of our wonderful slides here. But this shows the difference between the male sexual response curve and the female sexual response. Men tend to be that classic Masters and Johnson curve. I don't know if anybody has heard that or seen that in the past, but essentially it's, stimulus, arousal, plateau, orgasm, done. But women, as depicted here, are a lot more complicated in controlling that cycle. And we do get an entire cycle, which is lovely for us. And this was done by Dr. Rosemary Bisson. She works out of Vancouver. So we're quite proud of her out in Vancouver. And when she came up with this, I was in medical school. And she put this in urology and gynecology. She got into psych. We were well versed in this. But she just had this special interest in making sure that the medical students did learn this. And I know I've seen a certain, backlash in the community, on the online community, talking about how, gynecologists don't tend to know this or don't tend to know our anatomy, and particularly the nerve anatomy down to the cervix. But we do. We do all this. And like I said, this was ingrained since med school. So this is, if you will, the top of your circle, right? So your initial sexual desire, I don't know if my little, if my arrow is clicking there. So initial sexual, right there.
Yep.
Essentially, you can have multiple motivations for this, okay? And this is when you want to initiate the sexual experience. You start paying attention. So let's move along. Then that all ends up at the brain. And this is a major area where we can intervene here. On my screen, there's a bit of it.
Oh, yeah. There we go. Is that better?
Okay, so we can see a brain. It's important when there's a big pink brain in the diagram. And in brackets, it's telling us that, when we're processing stimuli, we can end up getting distracted really easy. Fear, self-monitoring, depression, fatigue, the medications. We talked about the SSRIs, how they can affect your libido. And I remember when we were first talking about this as a resident, somebody said, well, the first energy that drops off with women is their sexual energy. When everything needs to get done, their sexual energy is first. So the biggest libido really would be for their partner to help, to clear some things off the to-do list and actually make sensory processing a little more possible. Another step here that's missing, and Fiona, would be interesting to talk about with regards to what you said with some interventions, but mindfulness is actually really important as the number one treatment for this area within the sexual response cycle. So essentially, if you're unable to focus on the task at hand, your brain's going everywhere, you can learn these techniques. So the Calm app, didn't Mel talk about McConaughey? Maybe
that's the only Calm app use I have.
Okay. Mindfulness apps and guided meditation apps or programs on there too. Insight Timer is another one that's free. And I know Russell Brand was marketing it for a while, but it's what I use. We can then move along to sexual pain. And this is sort of where we're going to start getting into the genitourinary symptoms of menopause. Burning pain. Oh yeah, so we're moving along here. We can end up with burning pain, like I said, dryness, sexual pain. Sexual pain is a bit more complicated than a lot of people think. you can end up with just a little bit of a tear or a nick in your vaginal tissue and end up really spasming the muscles afterwards. It's involuntary. It's kind of like if you've gone for like a big long run and you know, you've triggered a muscle in your leg and you end up with kind of like a Charlie horse. You can get that inside the pelvis. The person to really investigate that and help you is actually a pelvic floor physiotherapist. They have a lot of advanced training, so align yourself with a pelvic floor physio if you need to start treating the muscular origins of pain, and your gynecologist should be able to examine you for that as well. Anytime you're concerned about a lesion, we want to see you. You know, we want to see if it responds to treatment. If it doesn't respond to treatment, we want to make sure that it's nothing to worry about. And with regards to treatments, we have hormonal and non-hormonal are the basic two. And I think there are some little pictures there. We've got the ring there. That's a little different from your NuvaRing if you are somebody who uses that for contraception. It's called the S ring, and it releases local estrogen, like so to the tissue it needs. It's a very smart delivery step. There are creams, so those can actually be divided into your non-medical and medical. Okay, your non-medical creams, really common one to use is called Replens, and another common one is called Gynatrof. They're both vaginal moisturizers. So this isn't your lube. Lube is obviously needed for sexual intercourse if that is required, or any sort of sexual contact if that is required, but moisturizing lubrication or moisturizing the vaginal tissue will help it make it more subtle, make it more able to lubricate as well. On top of that, you could also use estrogen in a cream form. You can use estrogen in a suppository form and estrogen in a pill form in the vagina. So those are all local ways to treat that tissue. I don't think we'll go into bladder prolapse or anything like that. I think that's a talk for another day, but that is another area of monitoring that a lot of women will notice in the sexual response cycle is they're worried about bladder. And that's another thing your gynecologist can deal with for you too. You know, do you have anything to add there?
No, I think you got it all.
So questions?
Yeah, Fiona, do we want to bring both of you guys up? And I'm going to just go through some of the questions that I've been banking that I think we may have missed out, or there might be some more specific ones.
Perfect.
One question was, can blood work confirm anything about menopause or give you any intel for treatment, or not really?
Oh, that's an awesome question. I should have addressed it earlier. So if you remember back to the graph where I showed you perimenopause, where it's like a roller coaster, like sometimes it's down, sometimes it's up, sometimes it's normal. The problem with blood work and also with saliva testing is you're taking a snapshot on that day. And so it can really trick you into thinking you're not in menopause, or you're really in menopause and you're just in this in-between range. So blood work, unfortunately, as it stands in 2022, is not helpful for telling you where you are if you're in that perimenopausal transition. If you think about it, when you're a teenager, you don't get blood work to say that you're in puberty, right? Like you don't have periods, then you go through this transition period, then you start to have regular periods. It's sort of that in reverse. And we don't do blood work then. We don't tend to do blood work at this point. I so wish we had a blood test that you could have done that would say, your last period will be in 3 months. It would be so helpful to have that, but we do not have that yet. And that's why I think it's really important for us as women, as we, support women researchers researching women's health, because we need information like that, but we don't have it yet. Anybody who is charging you privately to do blood tests, run away, because that is not going to be helpful. All you're going to do is waste your money on private blood tests like that.
Women with PCOS and menopause, any specific things or insights you'd want to share for that group?
Yeah, so PCOS, for anybody who doesn't know, is polycystic ovarian syndrome. And it's a condition where the ovaries produce hormones in a slightly different way, and their pancreas also gets involved. The pancreas is what makes insulin. So it's a relationship between diabetes and ovarian function. It can be associated with a difficulty to lose weight, higher rates of diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease, which are all things we touched on about menopause. What's tricky in menopause is it's hard to know when that last period is, because your periods are usually irregular already with PCOS. So it can be tricky to navigate through perimenopause with PCOS, but like our treatments for PCOS in menopause, it's really trying to look at that woman as a whole person and address her risks for heart disease and diabetes and all those things. Heather, do you have anything to add there?
No, I'm actually answering a question on the chart here. No,
Okay.
I think that PCOS is kind of a really hard disease to explain or even understand. I remember some 1 hour sessions as a resident trying to get my head around it. Basically, it's a disorder of between your brain and everything else that talks to your ovaries, and whether or not your ovaries want to listen, and anything along the way that goes wrong is PCOS, really. Mm-hmm. Within a cluster. So it just makes it harder for you to really know when the reason you're period free,
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's just asking too about preparing for perimenopause. Is there any fun things campers can do while they're waiting? We've got nothing else going on but to
I think, honestly, Mel, it's self-care. It's, looking after yourself, looking after your body, looking after your brain, trying new things, finding new ways to move, start cooking for yourself. I think it's not about a prescription medication. It's about living your best life, whether it's taking up painting classes with Mandy Stobo or going down to DJD and doing dance lessons like I did for my 40th birthday. I started to learn how to tap dance for the first time ever. You're at a point where you've as Lou said at the beginning, you've got no fucks left to give. Get out there and live. That's my best advice. Oh, and don't forget birth control, because it's easy to get pregnant and that might ruin your plans.
One other question to hysterectomies, women who have had full hysterectomies, what impact is that? What can they expect, or what's different with their menopause experience if they've had a hysterectomy?
Heather, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think a lot of times it gets confusing because what everybody understands about a hysterectomy is a little different. A lot of terms that people use are full hysterectomy or partial hysterectomy. And those mean different things to surgeons, if you will. So if somebody has had their uterus taken out for whatever reason and their ovaries got left behind, which is usually what you would do if somebody was early prior to menopause, like let's say at 35, somebody who had their uterus removed for bleeding. Their ovaries should have been left behind. They say once an ovary's been, a bit with one of the vessels severed to the ovary, it's still got blood flow from the other side, but it reduces about 1.5 years of ovulation years. I've heard them. And with regards to if you had your ovaries taken out, you often go through a really fast surgical menopause, and it's like in hospital.
Brutal.
You start to see it. Yeah. And of course that confuses everybody because some of the hot flashes and that kind of thing are signs that we look for with an infection, right? But oftentimes we're seeing hot flash right away.
Somebody's asking about Dr. Rosemary Blank in Vancouver. Did one of you mention Dr. Rosemary? What was the last name?
Basson, Basson.
Basson. Okay, hopefully she got that in the feed. I'm going to do a quick wrap up, and then we'll take a few more questions because I think campers are. It's Friday night, but we still need to get. Funny how that works, hey? It's like a weekend. We've got an extra half an hour, so I'll just do a quick thank you to our team. Lou, thank you. Carla, J9, Mandy did some amazing portraits of some of us that we'll get Rob to throw up at the end. Campers by your badges. I'm going to share some information about summer camp in the Facebook group. A lot of you guys were asking. We still have a full group from 2 years ago, but some are dropping off. So I'll be doing a wait list for that. That is the ultimate in self-care, is our overnight summer camps. We also have an overnight experience that we're doing, an old time camp at Heritage Park with Laura Gibbs. So I'll have that up for sale next week, and we're going to do a weekend in May and one in September. So I'll post all the fun stuff that we've got going on, and we do have some in-person events coming up in April, so I'll be sharing details about that. So this was fantastic. This is great information. I know campers are just like taking everything in. We'll be posting the video. It'll be on the Facebook page after if you guys want to go back and rewatch or pause and screen grab and do that. That's a great way to make sure you don't miss anything. So we'll stick around for a bit more and take some more questions if anybody's got them. And and if there's anything else you missed, Fiona, because we were, kind of rushing through your stuff. So if there's any other notes that you want to add, go ahead.
Awesome. I think one thing, and Heather held up a sign if it's okay to talk about, was bioidenticals. So bioidenticals became really popular about 10 years ago with Suzanne Summers. She wrote a book on menopause, which I would not recommend. Definitely get Menopause Manifesto instead. You're not going to be sold anything in Jen's book. Bioidentical is a marketing term for a specific kind of hormone therapy. It's not actually a medical term. In the marketing sense, what it means is that the hormone is chemically identical to what the ovary would produce. So I remember I told you there's different kinds of estrogens. There's actually different kinds of progesterones. They're molecular identical to what the ovary makes. There is a suggestion by people who sell bioidenticals is that they are risk-free, and that is not true. Every medication you take, it doesn't matter what it is, it's not a panacea. There's risks and benefits. So if someone tells you that their estrogen is risk-free, run away. Bioidenticals are often compounded and given at different doses. There's concerns with that. The FDA in the States have actually asked people to stop doing that because there's concerns with dosing. And one of the main problems, and I've actually seen a few patients in Calgary having had early cancers caused by bioidentical hormone therapy. So it's not always prescribed in a responsible way. So it's something that if someone wants the molecularly identical hormone to what their ovary was producing, we can actually give you that in a standardized format in a much less expensive way as well than what's being sold as a bioidentical. So I could go on a rant on that for ages because, like I said, I've seen 2 patients harmed by that in this city. The other thing is, again, if you want to deep dive into this, take a look at Jen Gunter's book. It's really good. Many centers in Canada have dedicated clinics for menopause and women's health. Gynecologists like myself and Heather are sometimes really busy doing things like looking after high-risk pregnancies as well as doing hysterectomies. So it's sometimes tough to get into people like us. But in Calgary, we have a women's health clinic that focuses on menopause. There's also a really good resource that you could go to. It's the North American Menopause Society, or NAMS, NAMS. NAMS have certification for menopause providers, whether they're a family physician, nurse practitioner, pharmacist, gynecologist like us. They list, and you can look up your city to see who in your city has qualified to be a menopause practitioner. And so that's NAMS, NAMS. So that's another way. Many family doctors are comfortable prescribing hormones, but if they grew up in the era of that WHI trial, they may not have had a lot of experience with prescribing hormones or navigating people through menopause. So if you're not getting answers from your family physician, seek out people in your community to help you out, or seriously, send me a DM on Twitter. I'm always on there. I'll try and help find you someone in your local community.
One other question, somebody's asking about a bicordial uterus and the effect on perimenopause.
I love bicordial. That sounds like a cocktail, but it should be bicordial.
Sorry, this is me probably miss bicordial.
That sounds very lovely. So, I mean, you guys, I'll go on for hours and hours. I love this stuff. So the uterus is such a cool organ. Oh my God. Okay. So the uterus actually starts out like 2 horns. And in some animals, there's actually like 2 separate uteruses. And when we're an embryo, like when we were in our mom's uterus, which is so cool. It's like a uterus within a uterus. It comes in the middle and it fuses, and then the middle part dissolves away. But some people have what's called a bicornuate uterus, which is actually, it's like this. It's a heart shape. They're so cute when you see them. And so a heart-shaped uterus should have no more trouble going through menopause, but they can give you a little bit of trouble getting an IUD, like getting an IUD to stay. Sometimes they're a little bit of tricky in the pregnancy, but some people, believe it or not only have like, they didn't get to the heart shape, they actually have two separate uteruses. So some people I have patients, believe it or not, they've got 2 vaginas, 2 cervixes, 2 uteruses. Like they're like super women. It's so cool.
J9, you should have a wedding band and call it heart-shaped uterus. I'll be backup spoons or some sort of non-instrument instrument. Headaches, migraines, is there a connection between hormones, periods, menopause, migraines? And I know that that's a tricky one. I know that there's no magic pill for migraines, especially in Calgary when we've got crazy weather systems that make it more complicated. So any thoughts for that?
Heather, do you want to take this one on?
Migraines are very, very broad ranging in their causes. We do see some women actually get migraines because of low estrogen, believe it. They get a dip before they get their period when the estrogen drops, and so we treat them with, estrogen. But what we worry about with estrogen in certain women with migraines is if they have those like neurologic aura type symptoms, and there can be an increased risk of stroke with those migraines. The data has changed recently with that. I don't know if Fiona's smiling because of that or not, but you can add your
Or the gin.
One question that I've seen come up quite a bit that I think probably needs addressing is a lot of people are like, why does IUD removal and insertion hurt so much? And that's something that we've seen making the rounds on social media, because a lot of people do come up and say, "Oh, it really hurt," because they have not done anything to make it better. And
I've got a fun story there. So our house tween, who's 11, came up to me with her TikTok and said, "Do you do this to people?" Because there was a TikTok round about IUD insertions back and forth, and I was like, "Well, I'm not that mean, but getting something into a uterus is really painful for some people." And doctors like me and Heather are really not out to make lives worse for women. We're really here to try and make lives better. So there are humane ways to put in an IUD and take them out. Sometimes that means going to an operating room and having some sedation, especially in young people or people who, having a pap test is horrible. Having an IUD is going to be even worse. So I've been on both sides of an IUD insertion. I've inserted thousands and I'm on my 3rd one myself. It doesn't have to be awful. And if you are, for whatever you're having done in a doctor's office, whether it's a PAP or a blood pressure or an IUD, if you're experiencing pain and it's not okay, you need to speak up and advocate for yourself and say, we need to do this a different way. And if your, healthcare practitioner, whether that's a nurse practitioner, physician, is not making things better for you, then you need to find someone else.
When I was doing them, I would always remind every single woman that or any single patient that came through, they're the boss of their own bodies. And anytime they say stop, I stop. But we would also work on, what was acceptable to them too, because some people really wanted it done in the office, really motivated to have it done in the office, and they knew they would make a sound because they're experiencing pain, but they really don't want to go to the OR. So, we just realize that that's actually how they're getting through it too. But it's just, for me and for I've seen Dr. Matatal in her office, and it's always a discussion as to like how you can still be in charge of this,
Couple more questions. Ablation, when is it? What's your thoughts on ablation?
I have lots of thoughts on ablation. So for people who have not heard of it, an endometrial ablation is like going inside a uterus with a napalm bomb and just destroying the lining. It's not done in the office, it's done in the operating room. So basically what we do is we go into the cavity of the uterus. We go in through the vagina like you're having a pap test with a little camera, in through the cervix. You're inside the cave of the uterus. What we do is we destroy the endometrial lining using an energy source. Oh, thank you, Heather. in Calgary, the technique we use is using electricity to burn the lining of the uterus. So you have an anesthetic for that, because that would be torture to have it done awake. It can do a really nice job to reduce the volume of bleeding someone is having with their periods. It works really well for some people, but it works really badly for others. So it's the type of procedure that it's cool because it's an outpatient. You come into the hospital, you have it done, you go home, your periods are lighter. But it really takes some special counseling to make sure you're a patient who would benefit from it and that it wouldn't make your life worse. I hear a lot of people, I see many women come in asking for an ablation, and really in the end, once we talk through what it involves, what the alternatives are, I'd say maybe less than half of them actually have an ablation when I hone in on what did they need for their uterus. So it can work for some, but it's like estrogen, it's not a panacea.
The name of the clinic in Calgary, is it just called the Women's Clinic? I know I've Googled it, just Bowness Women's Clinic.
Yeah, and they're up in Bowness, but there's a number of other family physicians around Calgary who do a great job with women's health and menopausal health.
The thing with the ablations, I mean, when they go in, they burn the lining of your uterus, right? This looks a little bit like a flying nun, but I swear to God, it's a uterus. They go in and burn that, but that tissue, as you know, regenerates every month. It has like hormones that talk to it, it listens. And so that tissue can actually bury into the uterus too if it's trying to grow back, or it can come back and just cause heavy bleeding. If it buries into the wall of your uterus, that's having endometriosis in the muscle of your uterus. So that can cause deep pain with sex and really bad cyclical pain. So if you're pain ahead of time, highly recommend you don't get this. And also it tends to fail before the age of 40. So you'll have a 35-year-old come in and you go, eventually the stuff grows back, it figures itself out. So the longer you are for menopause, the more likely you are going to fail it. And then be stuck with a scarred up cavity that you can't do anything minimally invasive to later.
So the brain fog and the sort of, changes in the brain for menopause, whether it's memory or brain fog or whatever, are those normal things? Or if a woman's going through that, is that like something that needs to be treated, I guess, or it's part of the experience?
Well, here's the problem, and this is similar in pregnancy, right? Like you have a symptom when you're pregnant. You're like, oh, this hurts down in my right groin. Is that pregnancy or is it something else? And it's the same in menopause. You're like, okay, my brain's not working right. I can't remember the name of all my kids or my aunt. Is this perimenopause, or am I going through depression? Do I have early signs of dementia? And that was like, to be fully frank, like when I started forgetting a few things, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have Alzheimer's. And so that was the defeatist road that I tend to go down. And so I think those are things that would be, if you're worried, you really need to go in and chat with your family doctor about and see, are there, what's your family history like? Are there any other signs that there could be something going wrong physically with your brain? And once you've ruled out some of those big bad things, you can put it down to perimenopause or menopause. And like I said, the good news is if it is a perimenopause thing, the brain fog does actually get better. And I didn't believe it until about the last 8 months, because my brain is now like, it's coming back out, because I just turned 50. So I think I've got all the perimenopause stuff behind, and now I'm like hoping to live my life like Lou does, but obviously not as fancy dressed. I'm
not yet. we're all gonna be slightly more sparkly moving forward. Okay, I'm gonna take one more question, and then Rob, do you have the drawings Mandy did of all three of us? Poor Rob, you could moonlight as a gynecologist after some of these events. You've really got a head. Or you'll have lots of information to share with the women in your life. If you want to throw up those drawings that Mandy did, Mandy I think has dropped off, so I want to share those. And one question too, I'm going to say two more questions is
Mandy's still there.
Is Mandy still there? I just can't see her on my screen. Mandy, being an advocate for yourself too, like when you go into your doctor's office, and I know sometimes women just go in and they ask a question and then they leave and they're like, I didn't really get resolution, whether it's heavy bleeding or they just have a concern. So, and I know you mentioned like finding an expert that specializes in menopause, but are there any other things that, you know, if somebody goes and they're like, I really want to try hormone therapy, or I really want an IUD, and they maybe are facing some resistance or not getting sort of the response they need. So what's a good way to be an advocate, I guess, for whatever
you know, medicine has a long history of misogyny and minimizing women's symptoms, and the time is over for that. So if you are looking for answers or looking for a prescription for hormones and someone is saying no, ask for a second opinion. You're always okay to ask for a second opinion or ask to see somebody else. And if you don't get that, I think that's a warning sign, and then you seek another health practitioner out. One of the challenges is we don't have an excess of family physicians, to be honest, in most parts of Canada, and especially in Alberta right now. So it can be hard to find that other help. But like I said, seek out places in your community. Like in Calgary, we have the Women's Health Clinic. Fight for yourself. You are absolutely worth it, and you need to find answers.
And I think at the same time too, I mean, one of the reasons I didn't choose family medicine is I didn't think I could get it all straight in 2 years. Like, to know a lot. And some of them do have their little niches that they explore. Like if your family doctor is really somebody who does a lot of sports med, probably not somebody who's most recently researched in gynae, but or at least the hormonal treatments, just extend them a little bit of grace there and ask for another opinion. And usually when they have comfort in prescribing those things, they're happy to.
Okay, we're gonna wrap. I want to go to bed too. It's almost I'm free tomorrow. Actually, today was my first day of freedom, so I'm ready to mask up and get back to going to the grocery store and stuff. So thank you, team. Thank you, campers. We still have a few hundred that were hanging out, obviously looking for help. So yeah, pick up the Jen Gunter book. Dr. Fiona's in our Facebook group, so sometimes when we have posts, she's happy to sort of jump in. Take care of yourselves, and we'll regroup and drink more than 2 glasses of bubbly. We'll drink our whole week's worth for camp next month. So I'll share details about our Bubbles event, and have a great weekend, campers, and thanks for joining us for our Hot Flash Bash. And thank you, Team Hoo Ha.
Every camp has a theme song that requires you sing along. The more we keep on drinking, the better we'll start singing. If you like to drink, wanna learn to fix your sink,
Seems like a functional thing.
wanna earn some badges and unite with other badges. Let's make a place that we belong. Sing the Campfire Hoo-Ha song. We're gonna camp hoo-ha, 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 yeah! Gonna camp hoo-ha, 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 yeah! We're gonna camp hoo-ha, 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 yeah! Gonna camp hoo-ha, 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 you are! You want the fun that camp brings.
I do.
But you really fucking hate camping.
I do.
Can make a craft or have a beer.
Craft beer.
You'll learn some useful shit here. That's what I hear anyway. Let's make a place that we belong and join the Campfire Hoo-Ha song. We're gonna camp hoo-ha, 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 yeah! We're gonna camp hoo-ha, 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 yeah! We're gonna camp hoo-ha, me, hoo-ha, hoo-ha! We're gonna camp hoo-ha, 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 hoo-ha.
That's 2 minutes. You were right. That's funny.